Yo, greetings, salutations, what the flip is up? I hope you enjoy my little setup with this plant. This is very real. Hi, hello, how are you? Today I'm gonna be doing a February and January reading review. In March. Great. Yeah, at some point in this video, we'll randomly jump to me being in my bedroom. So, jump scare warning.
Oh my goodness.
I've read 10 books so far this year. A mix of graphic novels and a mix of, you know, just regular, everyday book. Just the average run-of-the-mill book with words. I mean, graphic novels have words too, but like, anyway, so we're gonna be going over what I've read. Hi, I'm Normal. Nice to meet you. So the first book that I read this year, I have a physical copy of. It's Heartstopper Volume 5 by Alice Oseman. Now this is the 5th volume, as you may have guessed, in the Heartstopper series. This is a very popular book. Like when I went to the Barnes & Noble to get this book, the only copy that they had left of it was one with the cover that was just like this. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get this one. I don't feel like waiting. So Alice Oseman, they're a very popular author. If you don't know, Heartstopper was adapted to Netflix to be a series. And, you know, I think Heartstopper should be paying me to talk about them. I am a very influential figure, so I don't understand why they're not paying me to talk about the fact that I read this. But nevertheless, here we are. Anyway, if you haven't read this already, basically the main character, Charlie, is in a relationship with this guy named Nick, and they're taking little steps in their relationship and trying to figure out when to do certain things and when to say certain things. In this book, it's exploring more so the intimacy side of relationships, and Charlie isn't sure how to incorporate that into their relationship. Charlie, he has body image issues, so he's like, I'm gonna talk to my friends about it, but I'm not gonna say anything to Nick yet. But then he talks to his supportive friends to like try and figure out what to do. He's like, oh my God, help me. Oh my, what do I do?
Oh my gosh, what do I do?
I thought this was cute and wholesome, and what I appreciate about each volume of Heartstopper is the fact that it has something that we can take away and has some sort of importance to our life. So a big theme with Heartstopper is having open and honest communication, and obviously that's important for anyone who reads this. So those are my thoughts about that. I've been talking about this book for like 10 minutes. I need to get going. The next book I read is The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating by Elizabeth Tova Bailey. This is the first novella that I picked up this year, and it focuses on one big thing. Snails. I've learned so much about snails from that book. Like, it was kind of crazy because basically the author gets this snail from her caretaker who visits her every once in a while because Elizabeth, the author of this book, was dealing with medical issues. Her caretaker came over and gifted her a little snail and was like, oh, you want to take care of this? And basically Elizabeth did, and she tried to learn everything that she could about snails in order to take care of the snail the best that she could. So as I was saying, this is Bailey's autobiography. I think that's the name of it. Biography? Autobiography? I think an autobiography is when you write something about yourself by yourself. If so, this is an autobiography, and this talks about the challenges that come along with her life pre-diagnosis and the worries that come along pre-diagnosis. But as Bailey takes time to rest, she stays in a little cabin and watches over this snail. It's funny because I remember certain moments of this book where the snail was trying to figure out how to adapt to its environment, and one of the things that he did was slither around the cabin and basically eat little pieces of paper. Like, Bailey would look at certain documents and be like, okay, that's weird. Little pieces of this document are just gone. What happened to them? Because this was before Elizabeth got a terrarium for her snail and figured all that out. And she eventually was like, oh my God, I cannot let my snail live on paper and ink for the rest of its life. That's not good for it, and it's probably going to die. So some interesting facts that I learned about snails real quick. Once a snail decided to go out and do its own little thing and found a little snail trail that went on for miles and miles, and basically the snail followed the slimy path until it found another snail. And I also learned that there are different names for snails depending on what way the spiral of their shell goes. I can't remember the exact name, but like if it's counterclockwise or clockwise, there are different names for that. So I'm like, oh my god, okay, work. Snails, bring it to the runway. Oh my god, can you imagine if there was an episode or season of RuPaul's Drag Race where it's solely focused on snails?
Category is Bring It to the Runway.
I would love to see that. But Bailey's voice and writing in this book is very serene and calming because she talks about appreciating little things and celebrating mundanity and focusing on the little wins, because when you're going through something like that, it's like difficult to focus on the good things going on. She was like, okay, no matter how big or small this win is today, I'm gonna be celebrating it. And my snail is too. Like, we're gonna have a little party. We're gonna throw a little house party. And my little snail is gonna go around with a little party hat on its head, blowing a little party horn. And we're gonna be listening to music, and lights are gonna be going off, flickering left and right. A disco ball is gonna come down from the ceiling. That's what happens when you celebrate the little wins in Bailey's house. If you wanna read a little book that's focused on celebrating small moments and appreciating life and what you have, I'd recommend reading this book. Yes! Then I read Miss Ice Sandwich by Miyako Kawakami. So this is the first book that made me cry this year. Thank you very much. Miss Ice Sandwich takes place in Japan. It follows this little boy who is in like the equivalent of elementary school here in America. And this boy is enamored with this woman who works at a sandwich shop who has like electric blue eyeshadow, and like people judge her, and it's like, you know, leave the girl alone. She's just trying to work at a sandwich shop. She's probably making minimum wage. Leave her alone. But anyway, the narrator is never named, and we read about his time at school, his relationship with his friends, his relationship with his family, the struggles that he faces when he's trying to make friends and connect with other people. And I thought it was incredibly sweet. And on the back of the book, I remember it saying that it's told in an unemotional yet still touching way, and that's very true, because it just like talks about the character's experiences, lays out the facts, and it doesn't like delve that deep into the emotions that the characters experience. Rather, it focuses solely on the experience, and then we get to draw our own conclusions based off of that. This little boy is just navigating the complexities of life, and it's sweet. I've only read one other Kawakami book. I read All the Lovers in the Night, and while I thought the writing was very good, it didn't like hit as hard as Miss Ice Sandwich did. The parts that I found to be the most moving were his interactions with his grandmother and this girl at school named Tootie. So we love that. And then I also don't want to spoil anything, but the thing that made me cry was the grandmother of it all. That's what I have to say about it. But yeah, like, I would say just read it. Just go for it. And the last book that I read in January, it is The Adventure Zone, The 11th Hour. So this is the 5th volume in the Adventure Zone series. Oh my god, 5 volumes? Oh my god, in January I read 2 5th volumes. Crazy! What is the universe trying to tell me? 444-555-666. I finally got around to reading this. It was sitting on my bookshelf for months, and I read the 4th volume of this series back in December. This graphic novel series is based off a D&D podcast by the McElroys. This volume follows Taco, Magnus, and Merle as they're trying to save a town from impending, seemingly inevitable doom. But thanks to time travel, the 3 get several, seemingly like millions. No, it was like over 100 attempts to save the town. There are just so many silly moments in this little graphic novel series. But in the first vlog, I talked about how I really liked Carrie Peach's art style. I just like how expressive and bright her style is. Like this, for example. This book still smells good. Check out my new perfume today. It's graphic novel smell. I basically took a bunch of graphic novels that could have been given to someone else, ripped them all apart, and soaked them in water to create a perfume. Link in bio, it will be $1 million per bottle. But to me, The 11th Hour, it talks about how we cope with challenging situations, to say the least. And overall, it was just a silly, goofy time. So that was all that I read in January. I'm gonna hop into February right now. I'm gonna hop in like a little bunny. Okay, so the first book that I read in February was another graphic novel. It was Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley. You know, the guy who, Scott Pilgrim, Michael Cera. I was obsessed with Scott Pilgrim in middle school. Like, I went through this manga/graphic novel phase, and I remember reading all of the Scott Pilgrim books. I watched the movie. Can I tell you what the graphic novel series was exactly about? Do I exactly remember? No. But do I remember having a good time? Yes. Now I'm thinking about me in middle school. I don't know. I was going through my emo phase in 8th grade, and that's when I read this. So if that tells you anything. Anyway, so in Seconds, the main character, Katie, is a cook, and she has this restaurant. Oh my god, cook? Jesse, we need to cook. Jesse, we need to slay. Anyway, Katie is a cook, but not that kind of cook. And on the Goodreads page, it says that she's a talented young chef. She runs a successful restaurant, and she has big plans to open an even better one. But then, at some point, the progress with the restaurant isn't going as planned. It's taking a lot longer, and Katie's feeling disgruntled by it. She's like, can we just get this done? Let me open up my frickety frackety floppity restaurant. Floppity. But then eventually she meets up with an ex-lover, and that creates complicated stuff. But then this, like, I like to think about this character I'm about to talk about as a goblin, because there's this character, I don't remember exactly the name. I don't know if this character even had a name, but someone who works at the restaurant is aware that there's like this little like goblin character up in the rafters, and the goblin is also a connection to like this multi-universe world kind of thing. Katie then discovers these little mushrooms in her dresser that the goblin was just like perched on top of, and Katie was like, did I imagine that? Did I not? But then she wakes up the next morning and she finds that in her dresser, along with a little notebook, and with those mushrooms in that notebook, she can go back in time and change something that happened. I thought it was funny. I like the concept of, you know, Katie girl bossing her girl boss way into the girl boss industry of girl boss cooking. What else is there to say? Oh yeah, I really like the illustrations. It was very colorful. If I could put some pictures up right here, I will. I also like how it explored why it's a good thing we can't go back in time, because, you know, if we go back in time and our current self is now experiencing those changes, how are we gonna know what to do in certain situations that we've never been in but we changed? Because we haven't been through what that version of us has been through. Oh my god, I've read a lot of things about time travel these past 2 months. That's kind of crazy. 3 books that I read are about time travel. Anyway, time travel in this book is the easy way out, and the easy way out isn't even that easy. So a main motivator for Katie in going back in time is the fact that she wants her restaurant to open faster. But a big reason why she does what she does also is for men. And I was like, okay, I understand how that can connect and click with some people, but like for me, I was like, Katie, do it for you. Don't do it for a man. Like, you're gonna do that for a man. But other than the doing things for men part, I enjoyed this one too. I enjoyed my time here, and I think that's all I have to say about it. Yeah. Then I read Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. Now, on one of my videos on my channel, it was the book haul that I posted. Oh my god, that burp really got to me. I talked about how I was listening to the Sounds Like a Cult podcast by Amanda Montell, and I still do that sometimes. But what I know about Montell is the fact that her dad was in a cult, like was forced to be in a cult when he was little because of his parents, and then he escaped and like went to school on his own. This book talks about the language that cultish groups use, so it goes from like more extreme examples like Scientology, fun, Scientology, yay! Then to just like littler things, like Soul Cycle was a big one that she talked about, and she talked about social media a lot at the end. It was interesting to see the language be analyzed, because I've never seen the language of cults be analyzed like this before. But she talks about how like flimsy the word cult can be, because when we think about the word cult, we think about these more extreme groups. But then when we actually look at society, we're like, oh my god, social media, the fact that we have these things called followers instead of friends, that's kind of culty. She also talks about MLMs. Like, oh my god, do you want to be a boss, babe? Girl bossification. And then it was funny because in that section of the book, she had little messages before she's talking about certain topics, being like, oh my god, do you want to be a boss, babe? Let's set up a phone call. I think this would be a perfect fit for you. And then at the end of that section, there was another message basically being like, I've been seeing that you've been posting some pretty negative stuff in the Facebook group lately. I don't think that this opportunity is for you anymore. I'm sorry, babe, but we're gonna have to let you go. It was funny because when I finished this book, I wasn't expecting to cry, but I did. Because she was talking about how life without other people would just kind of be like, blanche, and like, oh, I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? So that's why I cried about it. But anyway, I digress. If that sounds interesting to you, I would recommend reading it. Next, going back to the time travel of it all, I read The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Now, this is a classic, and in the notes at the end of this book, I learned that H.G. Wells was like not even that experienced of a writer, but like I couldn't tell with this book because he seems like a pretty experienced writer. Like he has ideas and he executes them, and a lot of the times I was like, oh my god, what's going on? How did he conceptualize this? What is going on? How do I describe what this book is about? This book is basically about a mad scientist who is obsessed with the idea of time travel, and he's talking to his friends about this machine that he created for time travel, and then most of the book focuses on his experience actually time traveling far into the future. It was like some place in like this year. This book felt like you were sitting down to chat with your mad scientist bestie, and he was like, okay, I did this when I time traveled. This is what happened when I time traveled. And then there was another character named Weena, and she's my favorite character. She's a queen, she's an icon, and she is the moment.
Now come on now.
She basically like follows the narrator around the whole time. God, this book is so hard to explain. There's like an upper world and a world below the upper world. The world above is like more normal, but it's like advanced, like far into the future. And there are like little tweaks to the human anatomy as well, because you know, evolution is a thing.
Whoa.
And then below that, there's like this world that basically consists of like human spiders. And it was so creepy. The main conflict of this story is that someone stole the scientist's time machine, and he's like, I need to get back to where I came from. And from there, he's trying to face what comes along with being trapped far into the future. And there was this quote, it's snail related, that I think about to this day. The slowest snail that ever crawled dashed by too fast for me. It was also descriptions like that that made this book engaging to me. And then I also listened to an audiobook that was very immersive too, so I liked that. I want to read other H.G. Wells books now. What goes on in the mind of H.G. Wells? Like, how did he come up with those ideas? What drugs was he on? Moving on. And then another book that I read is Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. Now, in the last video that I posted, I talked about this book more in depth. So if you want to learn more about my thoughts about that, then I recommend checking out that video. But this book is about a character named Gilda who gets a job at a Catholic church out of desperation, and then also because she saw a flyer for free mental health resources at the church. So she goes to the church because she wanted to get those mental health resources, but then she ends up interviewing to be the receptionist at the church, and from there chaos ensues because Gilda is a lesbian and she hides aspects of herself because she works at the Catholic church. But there were a lot of funny moments throughout this book. Like, if you like dark humor, you would probably like it. This book made me laugh. This book made me cry. This book was very fast-paced, so I really enjoyed this. It was very sad too, and her relationship with her family was also heartbreaking. The ending was dark, but at the same time, it got a lot better, because if you watched my vlog, I said that I just wish Gilda would speak. I just wish she would speak up and tell people about what was going on. But then I also really understood where Gilda was coming from, because she didn't have the motivation to, due to her mental health, because she is struggling with anxiety and depression. I really liked the representation of mental health in this book because Emily Austen does not hold back. She does not romanticize anything. She does not 2012 Tumblr mental health at all. I really liked it. Another book that I read in my last vlog was Alone in Space by Tilly Walden. This graphic novel doesn't follow a specific story. It basically takes a bunch of Tilly Walden's work and puts it into one book. So there are more recent projects that she worked on, but then there are also comics that she worked on when she was a teenager and when she was in college. And I thought it was very interesting to see the progression of her work throughout the years. There were so many pretty things to look at. Tilly Walden has a way of incorporating more vulnerable parts of her experience into her stories. So while her stories bring joy to me and I'm like, ooh, and it makes me happy, there are also stories that are like, ooh, that hit because they're just like so vulnerable. The one that I liked the most out of this book was A City Inside, and on the Goodreads page for this it said that story is a study of growth and adulthood through a surreal and poetic recounting of one woman's life. It's set in the sky and in space at certain points, and then there are also a lot of comics focused on the queer experience. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it was funky and good time. And then the last book I'm going to be talking about is another Emily Austen book called Interesting Facts About Space. Now again, I talked about this book in the last vlog that I posted. This novel centers on a character named Enid who has a fear of bald men. Understandably so. Who is paranoid, who is obsessed with this true crime podcast. She listens to it on loop, who has a complicated relationship with her family. She has an estranged dad who recently passed away, and she's trying to connect with her step siblings. And it also, again, as Emily Austen books normally do, touches on mental health, and we follow Enid as she goes about her life while also dealing with anxiety, depression, neurodivergency. And I thought her relationship with her friends and her mother specifically was very sweet to see, but then at the same time it was a lot because Enid has a complicated relationship with her mother as well. But I really liked how she could just sit down on the phone with her mom and info dump about space. Autism! Enid is also partially deaf. She's deaf in one ear, and there are moments throughout the book that touch on that experience. There are like humorous parts related to that. For example, she goes to the gynecologist, and her gynecologist, number one, ends up being bald, but then also number two, he learns that she's partially deaf. So because of that, he starts basically like screaming at Enid in the middle of the appointment, and Enid is trying to stifle her laughter because she's like, oh my god, this situation sucks, but like he looks like an idiot. Just imagine a bald man whose head is reflecting the intense fluorescent lights of the room, blinding you with his bald head, and then he just like starts yelling at you. Just the way it was written was so funny to me. This book also focuses on her complex relationship with these two women. She learns that this woman she met through a dating app has been cheating on her wife with Enid, and that creates tension in their marriage. Then Enid ends up building a romantic relationship not with the woman who like cheated on her wife, but Polly, who ends up visiting Enid in her apartment and is at first upset, but then she just like lays on the floor and talks about everything that's going wrong with their relationship. And from there, they start a romantic relationship. This one was more slow paced than Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead. It was more reflective. It was spooky at some points. It made me paranoid at some points, which I think Emily Austen may have intended for, just to put us in the character's shoes and to help us understand where Enid was coming from. I think that's all I have to say about it. So those are all the books that I read in January and February. I've been having fun. Boo. I bet you thought you saw the last of me. You were wrong.
Surprise, bitch.
So I don't know when I recorded that last part, but it was a while ago. And it's April now, so I'm gonna tell you real quick what I read in March, okay? Okay, let's go. So the first one is Girl Juice by Benji Nate. This was a wild ride. It follows the 4 people that are here, and they were roommates.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
And all of them have their distinct personalities, but the ones that I remember the most are this one, who is only attracted to clowns. That sounds like I'm making that up, but I swear I'm not. And then this one, Bunny, and her main character traits are being hot and unemployed. So yeah, I thought this was so funny. There were so many moments where I was just like sitting there reading it and I was like, oh my god, like this one scene where she goes to a church and there are old people in the church with her too, and she was just like, please God, all I ask is that you help me get real. So that was a moment in this book. I also thought that the art style was really cool. Like, look at that. Like, I love how colorful it is. What else happened in here? I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, the character Tallulah got possessed after going viral online. So that was fun. I love going viral online and then getting possessed. It happens to me every Tuesday. Just a normal day at the office, you know? But yeah, this was funny. This was a good time. And then I read another graphic novel. I read The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie McKessie. I thought that was really cute. It was basically a graphic novel full of standalone pictures and quotes that was kind of like if you were to go through like a Pinterest board full of like live, laugh, love quotes and like flip through a book of them instead. That was kind of the energy that it was giving, but it was what I needed. So I have a few pictures. He said, always remember you matter. You're important and you are loved and you bring to this world things no one else can. And I was like, slay! And then this was also between, I think, the boy and the horse. And the horse said, or the mole, I don't know. Who was speaking here? No, it was the horse. Okay, I can read. We have such a long way to go. We have such a long way to go. And then the horse says, yes, but look how far we've come. Aww. All I have to say about that book is honestly it was cute and it warmed my heart. I think I need to blow my nose. I think I'm back to normal now. As normal as we can be, which is not very. The next book I read was Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. Now that I've read this book, I've read all 3 of Sally Rooney's novels, and most of her novels have been like kind of mid to me. Like, because the first book that I read of hers was Conversations with Friends, and that was very gossipy, and I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And I read it in like 3 days. And then the next book I read after that was Normal People. I didn't really like it all that much. Sally Rooney characters have such a hard time being honest and communicating, and that's like one thing that bothers me, but at the same time I know that's something that a lot of other people who read her work and really like it really like, because they're like, that's just how people are, that's how people talk. But anyway, going back to Beautiful World, Where Are You? It basically follows 2 sets of couples. The one couple goes on trips to Italy, and then the other couple, they've been friends since childhood and then they reconnect somehow, and then it also follows the 2 women and their connection and emails that they send back and forth to each other. I really like the emails part the most, I think, because they were explaining their personal emotions and then also exploring things such as class. And then also one of the women is a writer, so it explains her feelings related to that profession, and let me tell you, they are mixed. It was also a book that I read where I was like, do people who experience a lot of sexual attraction, are they okay? And I think the answer is no. Because there were just some parts in it where they would be talking about intimacy and they'd be like,
I'm only human, so like, of course I'm gonna want that.
and I was like, is that the thing that really makes us human? That's all I have to say about that. There were some quotes in this book where I was like, ooh, yes, That was good. So one of the characters was talking about how she used to keep a journal full of things that she found enjoyable on a day-to-day basis and pointing out the positives and stuff, and how she no longer had the ability or felt as if she couldn't do that anymore. And then she said, I felt like anything was possible, that there were no doors shut behind me, and that out there somewhere and yet unknown, there were people who would love and admire me and want to make me happy. Maybe that explains in some way the openness I felt toward the world. Maybe without knowing it, I was anticipating my future. I was watching for signs. I thought that was really nice and also relatable. And then towards the end of the book, one of the characters says, of course everything is terrible at the moment. And I miss you ardently, and I miss my family, and I miss parties and book launches and going to the cinema. But all that really means is that I love my life, and I'm excited to have it back again. Excited to feel that it's going to continue, that new things will keep happening, that nothing is over yet. And I thought that also was really nice. So there were parts in that book where I was like, yes. But then there were also parts in this book where I was like, okay. But yeah, if I had to rank each of Sally Rooney's books, I would put Conversations with Friends up top, and then Beautiful World, Where Are You in second, and then Normal People in third. So now you know. And then I have one more book to talk about. I read What My Bones Know by Stephanie Fu. Now, I stopped reading this back in November, I believe it was, just because I was like focused on other things that I wanted to read. I was like, okay, I'm gonna come back to this later. So then in March, I came back to it, and I'm really happy that I did, because oh my gosh, Stephanie Fu has a lot to say to people. So this book is a memoir, and it follows the author's journey of healing from complex PTSD, and she's basically delving into her past and the way that her past has impacted her and continues to impact her throughout her modern day. And then she's trying to figure out ways to better cope with how the trauma has been impacting her life. So she basically goes through a series of trying a bunch of different things. She goes to a bunch of different therapists. She tries breathing exercises. She tries going to yoga classes, gratitude, mindfulness, self-compassion, all of that. And she's like, okay, nothing is really working, so I need to find something else. Then she eventually does, and that's all the book really is. But it's more, of course, nuanced than that, and there's a lot more to it than what I just said. It was really nice to see her heal and figure out what works for her, and I thought it was really relatable to see how she would try a bunch of things, and then eventually at some point it would no longer work, or it wasn't as effective as it once was. And if you're thinking about reading this book, content warning, there's a lot of descriptions of what she went through that could be triggering to some people, so I would just say take care of yourself. But I thought this was really well done, and it made me laugh, and it made me cry, and I love it when books can do that to me. And there was also this one moment where she was at her boyfriend's family's house for Christmas, and she was talking about how much of a disaster it was. Hold on, let me see if I could find it. It said his little siblings started yelling that nobody understood them. His father went on a rant about the lamestream media. His mother couldn't find her glasses and shuffled about, bumping into things, and the dog shat on the floor. Wonderful performance of the dog, and the Oscar goes to the dog who shat on the floor. After I read this book, I went on Stephanie's Instagram and I just kind of looked around, and I saw this video of her saying that like she wanted this book to be funny because trauma a lot of times is funny because it's just so ridiculous, the things that happen to people. So she really wanted to mix the two together, and I was like, she gets it. Do I have anything else to say about that book? If there's anything else I want to say, then you're gonna see it in my next video. So I'll go more into depth about it there. So keep an eye out for that. Big things are coming. And by big things, I mean that one video. I think that's all I have to say about March. Those are the 4 books I read. The 4 books. The 4 books I read. Yeah, before I go, do you appreciate how I was trying my best to keep up with the narrative continuity of this video? By keeping up with the narrative continuity, I mean just keeping one thing the same, and that one thing being the same being the outfit I was wearing, and literally nothing else. Okay, back to past Amy. Take it away! Thank you for tuning in. I hope you maybe found some books that you have an interest in reading now. But yeah, I'm hungry now. I need to pee. I will see you in the next one. BookTube Nation. Goodbye.